Takadosh Boker or Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph 91a1. Says the Gemara, we're going to start on the last line of Tzadik Amud Bet 90b, the last line where it says as follows. You remember we had a machloket whether moving of the lips is considered an action or not, and therefore, obviously, right? Did you do an action? So, because you remember we were speaking about what happens right now if you're going to come, you're going to scream at the animal not to eat. So, is that considered right a true chasima or not? So, eight Rabbi Yochanan Shakish, asked Rabbi Yochanan to the Shakish, right? Lo she'adam rashai lehamid, right? Which means lechatchila, a person cannot come and switch to a substitute of a be'ema for chulin, which means the pasuk says lo yachalifenu v'lo yamidoto tov berav rabetov, right? So, therefore, you're not allowed to come and do this. We're actually going to read this in this week's parasha. Ela barada shimavar, right? Which means if a person came and he was emid, it's mumar, right? What does that mean? The kedusha is also going to go on the behemat chulin. They're both going to be kodesh, as the pasuk says, "V'imamer yamid behema bivema v'yahut murato yeh kodesh." Both of them are going to become kodesh. And sofeget arbaim, he gets lashes, so he gets flogged. That's the shon in English. He gets flogged. Why? He was over on the love. If the Torah says don't do it, so therefore, right, you're not allowed to do it. Now, when you're doing this, tmura, how's it being done? With your mouth. And we just said that even though you're doing it with your mouth, you still get lashes. So this is a proof that speaking, meaning akimat piv, is already considered a maaseh to get lashes. So says the Gemara, Amar Relei comes Reshakish and he answers Rabbi Yochanan, Hamani, who is the Shita? Rabbi Yehuda here. So Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Lav Shemu Maaseh, Lokin Lav. According to Shita Rabbi Yehuda, even a negative commandment that has no action, you still get lashes. So since you still get lashes for a negative commandment, right, in such a case, so therefore, right, that's why he's saying you're going to get lashes. So says the Gemara, Imatzi Mukmala Rabbi Yehuda. Can you actually come and tell me that we're going like a Yehuda? Like Tani, we already learned in the Reisha, Hakol Memerim, right? Anybody can make this tmura, whether it's going to be Echad Nashim, whether it's men or women. So we ask, what is it coming to include when it says everybody? What's everybody? So he says, Latuya Yoresh. This comes to include an inheritor, that somebody that comes and inherits an animal, right? And what happens is that, right? So he says it's also going to be a mumad. Udulok Rabbi Yehuda, and this doesn't go like Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda was going to tell me so Yehuda when he already said Yoresh Shenomimi. A Yoresh cannot do this. He cannot come and change it. And if he did it, it's not chal. Yoresh enosomech, and a Yoresh cannot do semicha as well. So therefore, it comes out. How are you going to tell me now that this Mishnah is going in accordance to Rabbi Yehuda, that akimat sfatayim you're going to be chayav? Now, why are you going to be chayav? Not because akimat sfatayim is a maaseh, but rather because it's a lav she'en bo maaseh va'afilu achilokin alav. That's Rabbi Yehuda. You can't tell me that because there's the other part, which was the Reisha, does not go like Rabbi Yehuda. Because when it says hakol memerim, hakol is coming to include a yoresh, and Rabbi Yehuda says mefurash a yoresh cannot do this tzmura, and a yoresh cannot do smicha for the korban of his father. Okay, so obviously it's not like a Yehuda. So answers the Gemara, Haitana savar la kavate bechada, upal ligale bechada. He says, you're right. The Tana of this Mishnah, according to Shtat Reshakish, he holds like a Yehuda. In what case? Lav shem b'maaseh lokin alav. But he argues on Rabbi Yehuda, right, on the case of the Yoresh. Meaning, according to him, yes, a Yoresh can do the Tmura, and a Yoresh can do Smicha. It's not that they're allowed to do it, but if they did it, it's Chal, and therefore it's going to be a problem, right? But, Mitzad Sheni, they hold like a Yehuda, Lav Shem Maseh Lokin Alav. Okay? So you have both. Fine. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in a Braita, Achosem et apara v'dashba loke. Imagine right now you're going to come, you're going to be chosem the para, and you're going to do disha. What does it mean disha? You're going to come and you're going to thresh. You're going to get lashes. Umeshalem, right? Arba kabin lepara, u'shlosha kabin le'chamor. You have to pay 4 kavs of teruah for the para, and 3 kavs of tivua, right, for the shore, which means that the rabbis evaluated how much would they eat during that time, and that's what you have to pay to the owners. Threshing. So he says, "Veha eno loke umet, ve'eno loke umeshalem." Ask the Gemara one second. If somebody comes and he kills someone, yeah, he comes and kills someone, and at the same time that he killed him, he broke his shirt, he tore his shirt. Does he have to pay for the shirt? No. He gets the most stringent punishment, which means, right, he does not come. Now, that's not only is by payment, it's even lashes. Meaning a person will not get lashes and die. You give him the death penalty. Yeah? So the same thing, we don't give him lashes and he has to pay. Because once you give him lashes, he becomes exempt from the compensation, from the penalty. So the question is, yeah, he comes and he says, no. So the question is, so one second. So if it's going to be like that, so why is it then, right, that here he gets the lashes plus he has to pay? We never do that. It's either you get the lashes or you have to pay. So both. So Amar Abaye says, how many? Who is this? Rabbi Meir. Is Rabbi Meir that he says lo kil mishalem. According to Shitat Rabbi Meir, you do pay and get lashes. It does exist such a thing, okay? And therefore, right? Obviously, we're going according to Shitat Rabbi Meir. That's the first answer. Second answer, Rav Ama etnan asra Torah, right? Vafilu ba alimo. What does that mean? We know that an etnan zonah, the Torah prohibits it to be brought on the mizbeach. What's an etnan? A present. So, for example, a person comes and he goes with a zonah. Now you have to pay a zonah, so you're going to pay her an animal. That is called an etnan zonah, and therefore an etnan zonah cannot be brought on the mizbeach. It can be brought as a sacrifice. Now he says the same halacha would apply that even if he has relations with his mother, and he gave her a tleh, he gave her a sheep as an etnan zonah, right? Also the same thing. Now, one second. If he goes with his mother, right, what happens? What's halacha? A person lives with his mother. What's halacha? So, he gets killed. So now, if it is going to be that he's going to be killed, so therefore, what's going on exactly? That means, right, we should learn from here that the concept of en adam metu mishalem is not going to be poter from the tashlumim, but the tashlumim is still there. But just betin can come and enforce it. They don't enforce it. But it's not, he's not going to be tzechuvah until he actually pays it. So therefore, if he's going to become patur from tashlumim, so why is it going to be chal the name of it etnan? Why are you going to say that it can become as a? So the same thing to do with chasima. Even though now he's going to get lashes, it's not that he's patur completely from the tashlumim. He's still chayav. And therefore, now when we come and we say that a person has to come and he has to pay for the food, the kavanah is klape shamayim. That's what he's obligated. That's what he's obligated. Klape shamayim. So, ma? Rav Papa comes and he says, Nishat meshicha yichayev la b'mzonotea. What does that mean? He comes and he says like this. He says, during the time of the meshicha, right, he's already chayav in the mezonot of the animal. Umil kelolaki achat achasima. You remember, this is a very famous concept that we mentioned many, many times. When do we use the concept of kimle b'draba mineh? When do we use the concept of kimle b'draba mineh? Kimle b'draba mineh means you give him the stricter punishment of the two, only when it's done at the same time. If it's going to be done beforehand, so therefore we don't do that, which means it is. What happens if a person comes and he tears the guy's shirt? And afterwards he kills him. So therefore, he's first obligated to pay him for the shirt. And then when he kills him, he gets killed. So he's obligated to different concepts. But it wasn't done at the same time. It was done at two separate times. So he comes and he says the same thing. When a person comes and he does meshicha on this animal, so what happens is that the meshicha, which is going to be done, right, on the animal, he's already chayav the tashlumin from the time of the meshicha. When is he obligated? The malkot, when he does the chasima. So therefore, since the beginning part, which is when he's pulling the animal towards him, he's already going to come and he's going to be chayav on the paying, because meaning he has to now give this animal this food, right? This animal is going to thresh. This animal eats however much it was, the kabin for the arba kabin for the para and 3 kabin for the chamor. He's already chayav in the money. Yeah. Now when he comes and he muzzles it, now he does the avirah that he's chayav on the chasima. So therefore he says, since it's done on 2 different times, this lokeu meshalem. You get both. You have to pay and you get lashes. So that is the third answer. Amar of Papa. Rav Papa says, Hanemile. When am I going to say these words? Right? Baur mine the vet of Papa baraba. So they asked, right? These words they went and they asked the Rav Papa baraba. Upashti leulu isur, and he said it's going to be a sur. Chada kilchata v'chada lav kilchata. One of them was mikaradim, and one of them was not mikaradim. It was just that way they're not going to be mizalzel in the Torah. Ba mine. So what was the question? Ba mine ma'u lalush et ha'isa b'chalav. Are you allowed to come and to knead dough with milk? Which means basically, are you allowed to make chalav bread? Bread which is chalavi. That's the question. Upashti lu l'isura kilchata. Says you're not allowed to. Why? Right? Tanya, to the Braita. En lashin et ha'isa b'chalav. You're not allowed to do lash, right, of the isa with chalav. Im lashin, if you did it, kol apat kula asura. The entire bread is going to be asur. Why? Because of ergel avera, which means it is. Usually you would eat the bread with meat. So if I'm going to come and I'm going to permit you to come and to start kneading bread with milk, you're going to come and eat it with meat. So therefore, Mikaradim, they came and they said, Asur, Kayotsebo, the same halacha would apply. And Tashin etatanu, you're not allowed to come and spread or to anoint the walls of the oven with aliyah. We're talking about the fats of the tail, the ox tail, let's say, for example, or the sheep tail here. Being tash, now if you did do it, kolapat kulasura, the entire bread is going to be asur. Here you're making the bread the opposite, you're making it meaty. So he says, you have to burn all the shuman off, and then it's going to become permitted. Okay?
Rabbi, even today.
What? Okay? The idach, the second question, baumine. Can you bring 2 different animals, a min v'sheno mino, a zachar nekeva, from 2 different animals inside of like a barn? Is there nisur of arbat kilaim? Right? Why? Because when you put them together, maybe they're going to live together. And therefore, if they're not going to live together, so therefore you're kilu causing it. But they only did. They said it's a sur, but not meikaradim. The Amar Shmuel says, uvimnaafim, when you're talking about witnesses that are coming in front of a bedin and they are testifying about immorality. Okay, so he says, ad shiyaru kederech hamnaafim. Right? What does that mean? You don't have to actually see the actual action. All you have to see is that ki'ilu, they're lying down together like menafim. Kilaim, right, is the same thing. Ad sheyachnis michol, right, mishoferet, which means, right, by human beings, if they're going to be doing an avera, you don't have to actually see the action. It's enough to see the more or less, if you want to call it, and that's already enough. But by kilaim, it has to actually, you're only going to be chayav malkut when you actually see the action, when you're going to put the even of the zachar into the nekeva. Okay? So therefore he says, you see from here, that to do the harba'ah, you need krichol b'shoferet, right? And therefore, when you said that it's a sur, it's a chumrah. Okay? So one more time. One was halacha, and one was a chumrah. To do with the bread, or the, right, whether it's milky bread or meaty bread, it's halacha. It's not chumrah. To do with this, it's going to be a chumrah. So, Mativ Rav Achtevoy Baram. Rav Achtevoy Barami comes, and he's going to ask the following question. Ilu ne'emar, if it says be'emtecha lo tarbiyah, that you're not allowed to be marbiyah, right? Ayiti omer, so then I would have said, lo yechol adam be'emah meshah she'oleh ala zachar. Right? Don't grab the nekeva when it's, the zachar is coming on top of it. Tamulumar kilaim. So therefore it says, kilaim. Right? What does that mean? Even the putting of one to another is already going to be a sud. Lam mikad the kilaim achizana milo. So is it not that you could be medayek from the Braita that in the case of kilayim, even grabbing the nekeva in order that the zachar could come on top of it is also not mutar? So therefore, basically, the nekeva wants to run away. You come and you grab the nekeva, and now the zachar comes, the male comes, and he has relations with her, right? So that you're going to tell me that's not good. So he says, "Maya chiza." What is the chiza? We're not talking about you're grabbing onto the horns. Hachnasa. We're talking about that you're inserting, right, the male organ into the female. So says the Gemara, so why is it called achiza? Achiza is you're grabbing onto something, you're holding onto something, not hachnasa. So he says lishna me'alya. You didn't want to say hachnasa is much more. It's we want it to be very clean. We didn't want to come and say all these. So therefore, we're talking about grabbing, right? Does it say that you're holding on to something, but not the insertion, right? So Amar of Yehuda says of Yehuda, min bemino mutalachnis, right? Do you know that a min bemino you're allowed to come and you're allowed to be machnis even michol shoferet, but afilu mishum pritzut aleka, and even pritzut is no isur, meaning, right? Because even though you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to look when two animals are having relations together, right? He says because of hirhura. Here, my time, what's the reasoning why you here you're allowed to? Bavit tetari is what you were just thinking about beforehand. Meaning like this: there does exist such a concept that a person is busy doing their job. Right? What does that mean? If he's busy doing his job, so therefore he's not busy coming to do other things. Now, this halakha, you should know, is very, it's a very fine line, right? So, for example, photographer. Yeah? So now, Baruch Hashem, more and more, they started getting female photographers for the women's section. But let's say it's a Jew. Yeah? We're not going to go in. It's a Jew. And he's a photographer. Now, he's taking pictures of the men and also then the women. Is it permitted or not? So the only heter that he has to do it is avit tetari. What does that mean? He's busy doing his avodah. So while he's busy doing his avodah, he can't be shufainik. They're going to tell him, hey, what are you doing here? Where's my pictures? Right? He's going to cut. Right? Even though you should know it's a very fine line. Why do I say it's a fine line? Because even with that, many times they'll come and they'll see, okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So therefore, right, the concept is whether it's going to be for photographers, it's going to be, how do you call these things? The lifeguards. We're talking about doctors, dentists, millions of things. Again, this is the concept of bavit tarit. Now, right? Even though now here is a little bit different than your case, because here, remember, here we're talking about that he's the one that's doing an avirah, but not for them. You understand? So now, by the way, this actually applies. That, for example, there was a case where they asked me, right? Or for example, girls are on a bus. They're going to, I don't know what, Orlando. Are they allowed to sing if there's a bus driver there, a male bus driver?
They're allowed. He's not allowed. It's not that they're
no, lifnei ben. Yeah, which means that they're not allowed to cause him to do an avirah. So you know the first question is, is he Jewish or not? Because if he's not Jewish, then it's fine. Yeah, if he's not Jewish, it would be fine, right? Why? It does not mean that you're allowed to come and be machshil a goy, right? That no. But since what you're doing was fine, and there's a vid tetarid, so for sure you could be mekel in the fact that it's going to be a goy. Now, if it's a Jew, the only heter would be a vid tetarid, and it's not that simple. Again, as we're going to see. But fine. Okay. One second. So now we're going to come and we're going to say now the next question, right? So the question starts, Mati v'achtavoy baram. V'achtavoy baram, he comes and he asks the following question. Ilu ne'emar, if it's going to be written b'mtecha lo tarbiyah, hayiti omer lo ye'echol zadam et ha'behema kadei shelo ya'ala lezachar. If it's written b'mtecha lo tarbiyah, I would say don't grab on in order that obviously that the male cannot come to the female. Tamul omar kilayim, what does it mean kilayim? Kilayim is good soul. Ha min b'mino, it's going to be permitted. Min b'mino nami achizaim achnasa lo. Meaning you just told me that there's no isur, if it's min b'mino, the same species, to come and to insert the male organ of the animal into the female organ of the animal in order that they should have the children. So there's no isur. Here it's written, yes. Because here it says, hachnasa, you're not allowed to. Achiza, there's no problem. So you could hold her down while the male is doing it, right? But you cannot come and insert it. So answers the Gemara, my achiza Achnasa. No, it is achnasa. That micro. So why is it called achiza? The same thing that we said before. The Ravashi says about the Mishnah. Right? The Ravashi comes and he says, "Haminta ba minem de Rav Nechemia resh galuta." This was a question that they came and they asked me, Rav Nechemia resh rosh galuta. Right? What happens with a sus with a susa and a chamura? Meaning, okay, fine. We spoke about before, you can't put in a sus with a chamura, right? But can you bring it in with its own species and another species? Right? That means there's three animals, right? That means you're bringing in a sus with a susa and also a chamura. So now, since you're putting them together, what's halacha? Since you do have min b'mino, batar min negarim. So for the sus will go with its own min. Or maybe afilu achilo, or maybe even that you're not allowed to. Upashti l'usura d'chata. Again, we did a isur lo kilchata mishum pritzuta de'avde, because of the pritzut of avadim kenaanim, right? That maybe they're going to be marbia kilayim biyadayim, and therefore, since they're going to do a biyadayim, that's why we said, right, that they're not allowed to. What does that mean? We know that the avadim, right, the avadim kenaanim of the resh galuta were very, very prutzim, and therefore, if you would tell them that they're allowed to do it, they would go in and do it themselves. They would put the sus with a hamorah. So because of that, they prohibited it again. Delo kidina, delo kilchata, meaning that it was not meikaradin. Because technically speaking, it goes after its own species. Meaning, if you're going to come and you're going to put, right, for example, you're going to put a man with a woman and a man. Usually the man will go with the woman. Now again, right, what does that mean? Because you're going with the same species. Now if it's going to go with so then the same thing, the sus will go with the sus. Yeah, you put in the chamura. Why is it going to go to the chamura if it's got another sus? Yeah, he's got the susa. But still, because of the pritzut of the Avadim Kananim, that's why we came and we prohibited. Mishnah, Tzadik Aleph Amud Bet, 91b, says the Mishnah. Haya ose biadav avalo beraglav. We're talking about eating we're talking about the poel eating during the time of melacha. So what happens, even if the poel is doing melacha with his hands and not with his feet, or with his feet, beraglav velo biyadav, but not with his hands, vafilu b'ktefo, even only his shoulders, right? Because he's not even moving his hands and his feet. Hareze ochel, he's allowed to eat that which he's dealing with, right? So therefore, it's any type of melacha he's allowed to eat. No, you could only eat if he's doing melacha with his hands and feet. Okay? So for example, they're only putting on his shoulder, and he's walking. No, you could eat. Why? Because according to the first shita, right? You could always eat. It doesn't matter what type of melacha you did. Huh? Yeah, that you're a poel and you're eating. You're allowed to eat even though you're not doing melacha with your hands or feet. According to that, you do have to do it with your hands and feet. Says the Gemara, my time out. What's the reasoning? Right? Why is it that a poel, right, that he's allowed to eat from the balabait even if he's not working with his hands and feet? So says the Gemara, when you're going to come into the vineyard of your friend, any melacha that you do. Meaning it doesn't matter what you're doing, but anytime that you're doing a melacha, you come and you eat. You are entitled to food. Yeah? I mean, don't tell me only if you're a cleaning lady or whatever that you're coming in scrubbing. No. You're allowed to eat. Okay. Fine. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yudah says, until you do with your hands and your feet. My time, what's the reason of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yudah? Kishor, like the shore. Just like the shore, right? Meaning, to do with the shore, it's the achila of the shore, which means the isur of lotason shobedisho is only when he's actually doing it with his hands and his feet. So too, the poel has to be hands and feet. Meaning the isur of the muzzling is only going to be if it's the hands and the feet. So by Rabbi, right, Rabbi Ravuna, hadash mavazin. What happens if you're going to be dash with an avaz or a tarnegol? Right? Now, they don't do it. They only do it. They don't do it only with their feet and not with their wings. Right? Which means they're not doing it with their hands and feet. Right? They're not doing it. So according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yudah, what's going to be the halacha? If you just told me now that you have to use their hands and the feet, so imagine I took an avaz or a tarnegol and they're doing it for me, and I muzzle them, so what? I'm not going to be chayav because it's not using its hands and its feet. So says the Gemara, bechol kocho ba'inan ra'ika. Usually the reason why you need the hands and the feet is because that's where you have all your strength, right? So to here you have all your strength. Well, dilmar maybe you need the hands and the feet, and here you don't have it. take, we don't have an answer. So if you take an avaz or tanegol and you start doing it, we don't have an answer for you. We don't know if it's bemet yover on the love or not. So Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav Hua says Nachman Rav Hua po'alim at shelo hilchu sheti bagat ochlim anavim ve'enam shotim yain. It says we're talking about the po'alim that they're coming and they're making the wine. So remember, how do you make wine? With their feet. Yeah, they come and they will do it with their feet. So it says, right? It says over here, ad shelo hilchu sheti bagat. Right, once they come and they're going to start doing the pouncing upon the trampling of the grapes, right? He says, as long as they didn't do that, they're allowed to eat the grapes, but they're not allowed to drink the wine. Like, why? Because it's not going to be nikar, right? Only by anavim, okay, not by the wine. Once they come and they walked sheti va'erev in the gat, that means they already started going one direction, another direction. Yeah, right? It's sheti va'erev in the gat. So then then they're allowed to eat the grapes plus drink the wine. Because again, once they're already doing that melacha, then they're allowed to do the wine as well. Beforehand, they didn't have nothing to do with the wine yet. It was only the grapes. So fine, they can eat the grapes, they can't drink the wine. But once they did the trampling, sheti verev, now they could also drink the wine. The second Mishnah on Tzadik Aleph Amud Bet, 91b. Haya oseh b'te'anim lo yochal ba'anavim. Right? That's my general rule, by the way. You always continue and then you always get your answers. Yeah? If you're going to come and you're going to deal with te'anim, you're not allowed to eat the anavim. Anavim, you're not allowed to eat the te'anim. Okay? Aval, monea et atzmo ad shemagia lemekom hayafot ve'ochel. But what you are allowed to do is, you don't need to eat until you get to the best place that you're allowed to do. Meaning like this, if I'm only dealing with grapes, I can't start coming and eating your dates, right? Or your figs, right? But I've got here grapes, but they're not the best quality. But if I can continue going another 3 or 4 furrows or whatever, like rows, those are like juicy. I'm allowed to wait until I get there, and that's what I'm going to start eating. But again, it's only during the time of melacha, obviously. Okay? Right? But because of a shavat aveda for the balim, which means that we don't want them to lose a lot of money, from one shura to another shura, when they finish it, okay, when they're coming back from the gat, okay, that means even though shat halichav, the poel, is not shat melacha, and therefore midin Torah, you're not allowed to eat during that time, chachamim instruct that he's still allowed to eat. Why? Because it's better for the balabai that he should eat in that fashion in order that he doesn't have to do it mamash b'shat melacha, and then he's doing it b'rifayon. Meaning, the rabbi said it's worth it for him that he could eat it in such a fashion instead of saying, no. Right now, you're not allowed to do it. You're not doing melacha. And now, go. Now you're going to do melacha. Now you're going to be eating and haphazardly do the melacha. So it was worth it for them. Or the chamor, right, when it's going to be poreket for them, you're taking down the masa from it. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. Ibailu, he asks the question. I'm right now working in this geffen. Can I eat in another geffen? So, do you need the same species? The same species? No, it's only that which you're actually working on, but not something else. Now, now if you're going to tell me, if you're doing this one, you're not going to work on another one. So a shor, how's he going to eat if it's going to be mechubar? Right? He says, why? The achilav, the poel, and the shor is a hekesh between them, correct? Now, if you're going to tell me that the Torah was not mezakeh to the poel to eat from that which he actually came and he planted, so therefore you're not going to be chayav l'aniach the shor, to eat the mechubar. So therefore he says, 1 second, the shor, he's working only in something which is mechubar, right? So he cannot come and start getting to places that he only somewhere else, right? Meaning his mouth is ahead of where he is, right? His work is behind him, right? His mouth is ahead of him. So you're going to tell me now, so what's going to happen there? So he says, he says, no, we're talking about a very, very long branch. And therefore, when you're working on one end, you could still reach the other end. So therefore, that's how, meaning that the same thing, like, it's a very long thing. So therefore, you could still, okay, fine. Now he says, Tashema, haya oseh b'te'anim. If you're working with a te'anim, lo yochal anavim, don't eat anavim. Ha te'anim v'te'anim, do me the te'anim v'anavim. We're talking about tenim and tenim. It's dumya to tenim and anavim. So he says, and there we said, ochel, you are allowed to eat. So what's going on? One more time. What do we just say? We said in our Mishnah, if you're dealing with the figs, you can't eat the grapes. But if it's figs and figs, mashma you could, right? But we just said the figs and figs is like going to be tenim and avim. So therefore you could eat. Now if you just said, so what's the case then? So Amar Rashisha Ravidi b'mudlet. We're talking about that the geffen, right, is like on top of the te'ena. So therefore it's ki'ilu, you're doing two different species. So not only are you coming and you're doing one for what you need, you're also picking up the other one to get out the other one. So therefore it's ki'ilu, you're dealing with two different species. Okay? So therefore in such a case, you're basically dealing with two different species. So therefore, since over here it's mudle, which means that you're dealing with both minim, so therefore it's going to be a different halacha. So you can't bring a proof from it. So Tashma, we're going to try to bring another proof. Aval monet, that's much. Now, basically you could withhold yourself and then go to the better place, and that's where you're going to start eating. If you're going to tell me that if you're dealing with this geffen, you could go and eat in another geffen, just bring it here and eat it here. Why do you have to wait until you get there and eat it there? Just bring it here. Answers the Gemara. Hata mishum bitul melacha lo kami ba'elan, ki kami ba'elan echa deika ishto banav mai. Says there, right? I would have thought to say that it's because of bitul melacha. Because if you're going to come now and you're going to tell me that you have to go walk over there, that's why we didn't allow you to do it. But when is the be'emet the question? The question is going to be, what happens if you have your wife and children there? They're not obligated to work, so therefore there's no bitul melacha, so they would bring it to you. So that's the question. Are you allowed to do that or not? So Tashema, we're going to try to bring another proof. The kulam lo amru ela b'sham melacha. It's only during the time of melacha. But mibnei Hashem avodat aveda lebaalim polim ochlim right balichatan no'omen from one place to another place. Uv'chaziratam min hagav when they come and back from the gat. So savua they thought hamealech ke'oseh ma'aseh dam. When you're walking for the balabait, that's like you're doing a melacha for the balabait. So mishum Hashem avodat baalim udachim midoraita lo achim. So it's only because of hashavat aveda, but not because of doraita. Almas you see from here. Oseh begefen zeh eno ela. Right, that if you're doing one geffen, you can't start coming and eating in the other geffen. So says the Gemara, no. Really, I'm going to tell you, Me'alech is not like meaning, what we're trying to do is there's two different ways of looking at it. Do we say that when you're walking for the balabait, even though right now you're not physically doing a melacha, but that in itself is doing a melacha, but you're walking for the balabait? Or do we say, no, it's not considered a maseh, but rather be'emet, you're allowed to take from one geffen to another geffen. So because of that, there are two different stadim in the Gemara. We're not sure which one's which. So we can't bring a proof, right, to what's the halacha. Okay? Fine. So now he comes and he says, Ika damni. There's another version now. What exactly is the other version? Savrua, they thought to say, Avalech is not considered Kiyom Sedam. Behind Utaman, that's the reason why we said in the Oraita, you're not allowed to eat. Why? Because it's not considered doing Maseh. How Maseh, but if you are doing an action, you could eat in the Oraita. Almas, you see from here. Even though you're doing melacha in one geffen, you could eat another geffen. So answers the Gemara again. It's the exact same thing. We just flipped it. Says the Gemara, "Lo, really be'emet, I'm going to tell you, you cannot eat another geffen, right? Umealech ke oseh maaseh dami. But mealech is like oseh maaseh. Let's just go to the Mishnah on Tzadik Bet Amud Aleph on the top. Right? We're just going to the Mishnah. Tzadik Bet Amud Aleph on the top. 92a on the top. We're going 2 dots. We're going to go to the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, uva chamor, right? The chamor says, keshi poreket. We said that the chamor, right, you're allowed to eat when they're taking off the burden. Keshi poreket, where are you eating from? Right? What does that mean? When you're taking off from the chamor, right, the masai, you're taking off one shot. So and then you go. So what are you eating? What does that mean you're eating? So he says, Ema, you could say ad shete poreket, until you're going to come and take it off. So the Tanina Lahad, the Tanu Rabbanan, therefore we're going to learn this Chamor v'Gamal ochlim mimasui shal gabein. A Chamor and a Gamal, you're allowed to eat from the fruits which is on top of them. As long as you're not going to come and take, right, from the fruits and you're going to eat from it. And therefore, again, that's what you're not allowed to do. So it means you're not allowed to take it from the masui and start eating from it, because that's obviously you're not allowed to do that, right? But you're allowed to come and you're allowed to eat until you actually unload this hamur.